Oh, this one. He knelt down and searched through the bundle he had brought, finding one particular book. The cover showed a young man and a young woman, but something seemed a little odd about the picture. He passed the book to Maomao, and she immediately began reading. Even a quick look at the pages showed it matched the story Lishu had described. Then she paused on one specific page. This here, she said. It was very much like a passage Lishu had written from memory. It was similar, but some of the details differed. The exact words were also different. The meaning was almost identical, though. Yeah, there are some odd things in there, huh? They say it is a translation of a play that is really popular in the West. A play? The West? Sure. Some of the descriptions sound a little funny, right? The person who translated it did not understand what the world looked like to nobles in that distant land. They changed names and customs to make them sound more like ours. Then, each person who copied the translation made further changes to suit their own preferences. That observation prompted Maomao to look again at the consort's summary. Lishu had included the name of one of the main characters, and it had bothered Maomao. The name didn't sound normal to her. Now she realized it was a Western name, directly transliterated into their language using arbitrary characters. She flipped through the pages of the book again, searching for that unusual name, but she could not find it. She did find another very similar passage. It used perfectly ordinary names. I wonder if she was reading some earlier copy of this book. This one is supposed to be quite old, the son said. Where can I get a copy of this? Maomao asked. I bought it from the copyist. They said they received it last summer. We are hoping to print it soon, so if you try to buy one now, we will ask you to wait. This means Consort Lishu probably used a copy that was already in circulation before last summer. Maomao stopped cold. Hadn't something else happened in the rear palace right about then? The caravan, what's that? The girl does like to talk to herself, doesn't she? The old bookseller remarked. He and his son both peered at Maomao, but she had other things on her mind. The caravan would have been able to bring translated books from the West, and the cargo wouldn't have been inspected very closely, as they had discovered from the trouble with the abortifacients just after the caravan's visit. It would have been easy to procure a book or two while the upper consorts, ladies-in-waiting, did their shopping. So what? Maomao said. Someone just happens to find this book among the caravan's goods, buys it, and then tries to use it to defeat her. What about the letter, then? Was there someone working with the enemy? I don't have the faintest idea what you are saying. You are a strange one. Dad, be nice. Maomao thought hard, ignoring the conversation, but she could not put the pieces together, not now. Give me this, she said, thrusting the book at the shopkeeper. 10 silver pieces, the old man wheezed, looking at his feet. That is robbery. This is not some fancy picture scroll. The cover is not very good and there are mistakes everywhere. It seems like the copyist finished it overnight. Maomao was not foolish enough to simply pay the price he asked. No, Dad, it is not for sale at all. We are going to use that to print from, the son said, stepping between Maomao and his father. 2 silver pieces. Is that a fair compromise? Maomao asked. 9 silver. And a half, I'm telling you it's not for sale. Some 30 minutes of squabbling later, Maomao obtained the book for 6 silver pieces and left the store. The son looked balefully after her. Another day was starting. Another day of nothing but eating and sleeping. How about this robe today, Lady Lishu? Kanan asked, holding up a blue outfit. This was one of Lishu's favorite activities, but she felt so depressed she could not find the enthusiasm to pick out clothes. Okay, that's fine, she said. She was too tired to ask Kanan to bring something different. Once she was changed, Kanan got breakfast ready. There was water on the floor below Lishu's room, but food was prepared in a separate location. Kanan seemed to hurry back with Lishu's meals. However, they were always cold by the time she arrived. Lishu would find herself sipping lukewarm soup. I am going out for a moment, Kanan said. She left the room. Lishu could hear her going down the stairs. There was nothing to do until she returned, but these past few days those moments hadn't felt empty. Lishu, are you there? Asked the voice from the next room. Lishu, clutching her pillow, went into the other room and sat down. She leaned against a chest of drawers. Still holding her pillow, she gazed up at the ceiling. A funny little pipe poked through one of the various holes in the dilapidated woodwork. The halls and stairways through which everyone had to pass were kept in decent condition. However, it didn't seem time had been taken to check over every room carefully. "I'm here, Sotai," Lishu called. In response, an aroma wafted down through the ceiling. It was at once sweet and bitter and most unusual. At first it had seemed very strange to Lishu, but it had become a source of comfort for her. It was no doubt some perfume the person above her wore. That person was a young woman, much like Lishu. And like Lishu, she was trapped in this tower for reasons beyond her control. She said her name was Sotai. She had first spoken to Lishu a few days earlier. Her voice was wispy and frail. However, she succeeded in pulling away a rotten part of the floor. This broke through the weakened ceiling. Then she pushed that pipe into Lishu's room. She was clearly a much stronger person than Lishu. The consort was surprised, even terrified, the first time she heard the voice from above. But once she realized the speaker was neither a mouse nor a ghost, but a young woman her own age, Lishu opened up to her quickly. Lishu had plenty of time to kill. She told Sotai her name before she knew what she was doing. To her relief, there was no particular reaction. Maybe Sotai didn't know who Lishu was. "I wonder what they'll serve today," Sotai said. "Yesterday was 5-flavor congee, so I hope we get chicken and egg today. I wish they would stop with all the shellfish." It was so strange how, lacking anything else to do, simply eating became an entertainment in its own right. "That is right, you cannot have seafood, can you? But it is so good. There is some I can have. But I always feel funny about it." It was almost as odd to consort Lishu as anything that she never felt lost for words with Sotai. Perhaps it was because they could not actually see each other. Lishu had never specifically asked why Sotai was here in the pagoda. But when Lishu said she had been locked up on vague charges, Sotai volunteered that she was in much the same situation. "There is really nothing to do around here, is there? All free time and nothing to fill it," Sotai said. "You're telling me? I've never been more sensitive to the sound of footsteps in my life. I know what you mean. You know who it has to be. It's the sound of your meal arriving and you act like it." "What gluttons?" Lishu said, and she heard giggling in response. "You have very good ears, Sotai. You must have heard me down here. That is why you talk to me." Considering the aging structure, hearing a voice from the floor below would have demanded pretty decent hearing. Lishu hardly even heard anything that was going on above her. "That is true. I guess my hearing is pretty good. For example, I can tell someone is coming up the stairs right now." Lishu focused and listened, and indeed she heard footsteps approaching. She was sure it must be Kanan, but the steps went straight past her chambers, continuing upward. Sotai said, "Hold on a second." She left for a moment. There was some clattering as she returned. "Ooh, that is hot. Sorry to tell you, but it's seafood congee today." What is in it?" "I think there is dried shrimp. And this might be a little bit of pork here. I guess I can eat that stuff." They were hardly her favorites, but she could either eat them or starve to death. If she complained about the food, she would only make life harder for Kanan. Lishu thought about Kanan. She was late. How long did it take to get breakfast? Sotai's breakfast was already here. In fact, Kanan had seemed to be taking her time for the past several days, Lishu had noticed. But when Kanan returned, Lishu's conversations with Sotai had to stop. So the consort had been willing to overlook the delays. Lishu could hear Sotai eating from the little pipe in the ceiling. She said she did not have any ladies in waiting with her. However, someone must have brought the food quickly if the congee was still hot. "Hey Lishu, do you want to know something?" "What is it?" "It is about this floor." Lishu was on the 3rd floor of the pagoda, and Sotai was above her on the 4th floor. From the outside, the tower looked as if it might be 10 stories or more. People say nothing above the 4th floor has been used in decades, so it is even more broken down than our levels. You have to go by guards on the way down, but because no one uses those higher floors, there is no one to stop you from going up. Wow, really? Really? Perhaps it is because you cannot escape from the upper levels. There were windows around the outside of the tower, but even if one could break them and go through, there was still the height to consider. Lishu, at least, did not think she could get a ladder to help her climb down, nor did she wish to try. Such a noticeable breakout attempt would not escape the attention of the guards. However, the bigger problem was that even if Lishu managed to get out, she had nowhere to go. She kept waiting and hoping that Lady Ardu might visit her, but but the former consort had never come to the tower. It had hardly been a full 10 days since their last meeting, though Lishu knew it would be petulant to speak of the issue. There had been no contact from the apothecary or Lishu's father either. It was easy enough to say it hadn't been that long, but every day that passed heightened Lishu's anxiety. If she hadn't had Sotai to talk to, she thought she might have lost her mind already. "I've got an idea. Do you want to try going to the upper floors?" That suggestion sent a shock through Lishu's heart at that particular moment. What do you mean, the upper floors? The guard between the 3rd and 4th floors is changed 3 times every day. The guard on duty goes down to summon the next person. For those few minutes no one is there. They do not change all the guards at once, of course, so you cannot go downstairs, but you could go up. I could do it any time. There is no one above the 4th floor. She could go upstairs. We could see the whole capital from up there. Why not take a look? What is the harm? Lishu did not say anything right away. As Sotai's words drifted down to her, they were accompanied by that almost sweet, almost bitter smell. Lishu felt she would very much like to see the capital, but she hadn't taken a single step yet. "I have a lady in waiting with me," she said. "If I disappeared, she would notice right away. You haven't told her about me." "Why is that?" Lishu found that question hard to answer. A voice from the ceiling seemed like a tricky thing to explain. She was afraid Kanan would try to make her stop talking to Sotai. "Are you worried about what she would think of it?" "So she is an attendant who leaves you alone while she enjoys being free of this tower." Lishu felt a chill run down her spine, but she could not deny what Sotai was saying. Lishu knew perfectly well that there was only one Kanan, her chief lady-in-waiting. Kanan could not be with Lishu constantly all day, every day. And yet, even at this very moment, was she out there, savouring the open air while Lishu languished here? The consort shook her head vigorously, as if she could shake the thought away. "That's not what she is doing. No, of course not. She is much too nice a lady to leave you here and forget about you, Lishu." Sotai seemed to be trying to walk back her words, perhaps out of kindness to Lishu. "I just wish you could see the view from up here. I wish I could share it with you. If you ever change your mind, just come on up. Tell your lady-in-waiting to take half a day off. That should be plenty of time." They changed the guards at Lishu, stared at the ground and listened to Sotai describe the timing of the guard changes. Then Sotai left to clean up her meal, withdrawing the pipe from the ceiling so Kanan wouldn't notice it. Footsteps came again, and this time it was Kanan, who entered the room saying, "I'm sorry to keep you waiting so long, Lady Lishu." There appeared to be some perspiration on her face, but she had found time to change clothes, including a new sash. Kanan set Lishu's breakfast on the table, and the consort picked up the bowl. She took a lotus leaf and started on the loathed seafood congee. The gruel was stone cold, like glue in her mouth, thick and sticky and flavourless. Chapter 15, Scandal, Part 3. I don't understand it. That was the only assessment Maomao could offer of the book she had spent so much money on. She had read it twice, thinking perhaps she missed the interesting part the first time. Still flummoxed, she copied the entire thing out, and this was where it had gotten her. "I just don't understand." This was something deeper than whether or not she found the book interesting. The problem was a matter of emotions. As an experiment, she showed the book to the courtesans at the verdigris house. A struggle broke out among the women to read it, and all of their eyes glittered. The incorrect characters in the text and the mistranslations did not seem to matter to them. It simply seemed very appealing. A boy and a girl from rival houses met at a banquet and fell in love at first sight. Everything was fine until the boy argued with someone from the girl's family and killed him. This made relations between the two households even worse. However, it did not stop the young lovers, burning with passion, from getting married. Despite the stiffness of the translation, Maomao was truly befuddled by the behaviour of the main characters. They were both driven by the passions of youth. At the story's end, both main characters died because of a small miscommunication. Maomao thought they could have avoided the whole problem if they had been a little more methodical about staying in touch and explaining their plans. When she offered this opinion to the captivated courtesans, they responded with some fist-shaking and declared, "That just shows how fiery and passionate their love was." Someone else took her by the shoulders and explained, "You see, It is precisely those little hiccups of destiny that make tragedy shine so brightly. Maomao did not understand any of it, so this was what Consort Lishu had been copying out. Had she noticed anything particularly appealing about it? Maomao had already informed Jinshi regarding the book. The text she currently possessed was a copy she had made over the course of a single night. It contained no illustrations, but when bound together with a simple string, it did look somewhat like a proper book. She had Chuyu help her, but the paper wasn't exactly even. The entire product had, well, let's call it character. Chuyu had said, "I told you I would do pictures." She replied, "Maybe next time. Just try to cut the paper straight, will you?" She had spent all her time in arguments of that sort. Meanwhile, no matter how long she waited, things concerning Consort Lishu did not seem to progress. In fact, very little seemed to be happening at all. She did receive word from Lahan, however. He said he would be meeting with the West soon, and he asked if she wanted to join him. The West was likely the golden-haired Env. This was the one who had presented them with the bold choice between material aid and political asylum. Lahan and the envoy had already discussed things once, but he said nothing had been resolved yet. Maomao had been present, but with all the discussion of politics and business, she had not been able to contribute much beyond taking up space. So she declined this new invitation. She wondered what would happen if the eccentric strategist overheard and tried to join them. It was said he was busy making a book about Go. When he needed a break, he went to cause trouble at the medical office. He should do his job, Maomao thought. She realized that at least during peacetime, his people might actually work better if he wasn't there. But when he was at his office, Maomao knew she was safe, so she wished he would stay there. Additionally, she felt sorry for the medical staff who had to endure his frequent visits. "We haven't had much real work lately," Maomao said with a large sigh. She often spent time preparing supplies of the medicines she used regularly. However, recently there had been a lack of chances to experiment with unusual drugs or create new mixtures. She often had to leave the shop in other hands. She was summoned away to tasks that were outside her job description. This had left her main work growing a bit stagnant. It did not help that she still had to teach Seizen while she made most of her drugs. She just wanted to get a taste of some unusual draft once in a while. She wanted to mix up some fresh new pharmaceuticals and find out what they did. She had been working her way through the medicines she purchased in the Western capital. However, they left her wondering if there wasn't anything more unusual out there, something more interesting. On top of her medicine cabinet were 3 small pots for plants. One of those pots had a fingertip-sized green bud sprouting from it. These were the places she had planted the cactus seeds. The seeds came from a dry climate, so she did not water them much. She felt they might have all kinds of uses when they got bigger, but the thought that it could be years before she had the opportunity to find out what they were was enough to make her feel faint. "Maybe I'll get lucky and find a blowfish liver on the ground or something," she thought idly as she gazed at the pots. The door clattered, and she looked up, wondering who it was. She found that the visitor had dropped something at their feet. Something was wrapped in cloth. It looked like a branch. Maomao reached out and her eyes glowed. It was a deer's antler. It was not just any antler, it was still soft. This antler had been growing, not simply calcified and fallen away when the deer grew a new one. It was almost 1 shaku long, and she knew exactly what it was. "A velvet antler," she exclaimed. It was the newly grown antler of a deer. That freshness was important when you were selling them. They were harvested first thing in spring, and the very tips were a particularly prized and expensive form of the product. Yes, the tip was attached to this one. It was quite long, but judging from the softness and the way it was covered in fuzz, it would still possess plenty of medicinal potency. The sparkle in Maomao's eyes was accompanied by a thread of drool dangling from her mouth. Sometimes vendors tried to sell velvet antler. It was always powdered, and despite claiming they sold only the finest products, it was clear that other parts besides the tip had been mixed in. Still, many customers believed the powder still had medicinal properties and wanted a dose before visiting the courtesans. The medicine was said to be very effective for male customers. Just imagine how much medicine she could make with an antler this size. "First I need some boiling water," she thought, to kill any insects and coagulate the blood, looking lovingly at her prize. Then a large hand reached in from the side and wrapped the cloth back around the antler, stealing it away from her. "Hey, hands off." Maomao looked up, her displeasure plain on her face. She discovered someone she hadn't seen in a long time. Their smile could easily have been mistaken for that of a gentle celestial nymph. However, the scar that ran down their right cheek showed this was more than just idealized beauty. "It has been quite a while, Master Jinchi," she said. Almost 2 months had passed since their return from the western capital, and during that time they hadn't seen each other. They had exchanged some letters, but it was always about business. Either Basin or an anonymous messenger brought word from Jinchi to the pleasure district. She thought he looked a little more angular than before. Perhaps he had lost some weight, considering how hot it was these days.